Lily trusted Mark. Ryan suspected him. Elena loved them both. But inside that quiet suburban home, trust twisted into betrayal, suspicion turned into proof, and love shattered into something violent. By the time the truth surfaced, it was too late. Mark was already chained in the basement. Lily's life was hanging by a thread, and Elena's revenge was about to turn their perfect family into a massacre no one would forget. Down in the basement, Mark's screams were never heard. The walls were thick, the door double-locked, and the old storage room Elena had cleared out was far enough from the main living space that no one would suspect anything. The only ones who knew the truth were Elena and Mark, trapped in a brutal, silent war beneath the family home. Elena didn't kill him right away. That would have been too easy, too quick. Instead, she made sure every second of his existence was a reminder of the betrayal he brought into her house. Food came in small portions, barely enough to keep him alive. Cold canned beans, moldy bread, sometimes nothing at all. Water was rationed, given only when she felt like it, and every few hours she played that video over and over, letting it echo in that damp, suffocating space. She wanted him to see himself for what he was, a liar, a manipulator, a predator who used her trust to worm his way into her family. The man who smiled in wedding photos while corrupting the child she had raised. Lily still moved around the house like a ghost. She avoided eye contact with Elena, barely spoke to Ryan, and spent most of her time locked in her room. If she knew that Mark was suffering beneath her feet, she didn't show it. Maybe she was pretending, or maybe guilt had broken something inside her too. To Elena, it didn't matter. In her eyes, both of them were guilty. Mark for his manipulation, and Lily for allowing it to happen. In Elena's twisted mind, love didn't excuse betrayal. Ryan, meanwhile, felt like he was living in someone else's life. He knew something was off, but he couldn't put it together. His mother's calm was unnatural. The house was too quiet, too neat, too organized. The weight of what he'd uncovered was already eating him alive, and now the unease of what followed made sleep impossible. Ryan started avoiding home, staying at friends' houses, making excuses to be anywhere else. Deep down, though, he knew he was just running from the storm that was building inside his family. As days stretched into weeks, the police kept stopping by, asking more questions. Mark's coworkers mentioned missed calls, unpaid invoices. One neighbor swore they heard yelling one night, but Elena brushed it off with practiced ease. The police had nothing, no body, no evidence, nothing that connected her to Mark's disappearance. And that was exactly how she wanted it. But something inside Elena began to shift. It wasn't enough anymore to make Mark suffer alone. The betrayal felt too deep, the pain too sharp. She didn't just want revenge on Mark. She wanted the entire memory of him erased from her life, along with anything that reminded her of how badly she had been fooled. In that dark, quiet house, Elena's rage turned into something new, something dangerous. It wasn't about justice anymore. It was about cleansing. And soon, she decided, Mark wouldn't be the only one to pay the price. Elena didn't eat. She didn't sleep. For days after watching that video, she moved through the house like a ghost, performing basic tasks with robotic precision. She cleaned the kitchen. She folded laundry. She smiled politely at neighbors passing by. But inside her mind, something dark and steady was growing. Betrayal didn't feel like the right word. It was something deeper, more primal. This wasn't just about Mark's violation or Lily's betrayal. To Elena, it was the destruction of everything she had fought to build. All those long nights at the hospital, all the sacrifices she made as a single mother, all the broken pieces she had glued back together after her first marriage, all of it shattered in a few minutes of blurry footage on her son's phone. At first, she thought about going to the police. Let them handle it. Let them drag Mark out of her life in handcuffs. But the more she imagined that scenario, the more it felt like weakness. The courts didn't care about women like her. They wouldn't protect her family from shame. Lily's name would be dragged through every courtroom and newspaper, humiliated, labeled, ruined forever. Mark might go to jail, but he would live, he would breathe, and he would still win in ways that Elena couldn't tolerate. So instead, Elena chose silence. Silence was control. Silence meant no one could twist the story. Silence meant she could decide what justice looked like. She stopped asking Lily questions. She didn't confront Mark. She played the role of the patient, forgiving wife, waiting for her moment. And while Ryan was filled with confusion and guilt over exposing the secret, Elena was sharpening the edges of her rage into something cold, something sharp. One night, when Mark came home late smelling of whiskey, Elena made him his favorite dinner. She even laughed at his tired jokes. No one would have guessed that underneath that calm smile, she had already moved his tools from the garage, already cleared out the old storage closet in the basement. No one knew that she had been researching online how to immobilize a grown man without killing him immediately. Elena didn't want a quick ending. She wanted something else, something that would make Mark feel every inch of her betrayal. 2 days later, Mark vanished. He didn't take his truck, didn't leave a note. It was like he evaporated into thin air. Neighbors began whispering about arguments, money problems, maybe even another woman. The police came by, asked questions, but Elena played the grieving, confused wife perfectly. No suspicion stuck to her. To the outside world, she was just another woman abandoned by her husband, left behind with 2 children and a pile of unpaid bills. But beneath the Carter family's clean white home in that dark, musty basement, Mark was very much alive, chained, starving, frightened beyond reason. And as Elena stood above him, calm and deliberate, she knew this was just the beginning. For her, justice wasn't a courtroom. It was personal, it was quiet, and it was going to be brutal. It happened on a Sunday evening, the kind of summer day when neighbors washed their cars and kids rode bikes up and down the street. No one noticed the storm building behind the closed doors of the Carter house. Elena had spent the entire morning preparing, moving through the house with unsettling calm. She cleaned the counters, made Ryan's favorite breakfast, and even left Lily's laundry folded neatly on her bed. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal day. But Elena had already made up her mind. This was going to be the last day any of them would live in that house together. Mark's body was already halfway to death by that point. He was weak, his voice nothing more than hoarse whispers, skin pale and bruised. Elena stood over him one last time, playing that same grainy video again, as his eyes fluttered between guilt and numbness. Without a word, she pressed the barrel of her old revolver to his forehead and pulled the trigger. The sound barely made it past the concrete walls of the basement. Mark's twisted chapter was over, but Elena wasn't finished. Her rage wasn't satisfied with just Mark's death. In her broken, vengeful mind, Lily was just as responsible. Betrayal wasn't supposed to come from strangers. It was supposed to be unimaginable between family. And Lily had let it happen. Whether through manipulation or choice, Elena didn't care anymore. The betrayal burned too deeply. Upstairs, Lily sat in her room, headphones on, completely unaware of the footsteps approaching. Elena moved with terrifying precision, steady, deliberate, unstoppable. The shot was quick. By the time the neighbors heard it, it was already too late. The screams that followed didn't come from Lily. They came from Ryan, who had walked through the front door just seconds before the gunshot echoed through the hallway. Frozen in shock, Ryan saw his mother standing in Lily's doorway, gun in hand, a smear of blood on her face like war paint. For a moment, their eyes locked, mother and son, each trapped in a nightmare they couldn't escape. Ryan ran, bolting out of the house barefoot, screaming for help, while Elena stood motionless, almost serene in the doorway. The police arrived within minutes. Neighbors poured out of their homes, watching in stunned silence as armed officers surrounded the once peaceful home. Elena didn't resist. She walked out slowly, hands in the air, the revolver hanging loosely from her fingers like it was nothing more than a tool she no longer needed. The blood on her clothes, the wild look in her eyes, it was clear to everyone that this was not a random act of violence. This was personal, calculated, final. The newspapers called it the Carter family massacre. Reporters tried to piece together the perfect suburban image with the horror they uncovered, but no headline could capture the full weight of what had happened behind those walls. Ryan was the only one left standing, a survivor, not by strength, but by accident. What began with a hidden phone camera ended in blood, betrayal, and the destruction of an entire family. Ryan waited until late that night to check the recording. His hands trembled as he unlocked the phone, his stomach tightening with a sick kind of dread. Part of him hoped that maybe he was wrong, that maybe what he saw earlier was just a trick of the light, or his imagination twisting things in the worst possible way. But deep down, he already knew. The video confirmed everything in grainy, low-quality footage that somehow made the betrayal feel even dirtier, more real. Mark was sitting on the couch with Lily curled up against him, their closeness far beyond what a father and stepdaughter should ever share. The worst part wasn't even the physical touch. It was the way they looked at each other, like two people sharing a private, shameful secret. The way Lily smiled softly at him, her defenses gone, trusting him completely. It wasn't just lust. It was manipulation, control, and something far darker. Ryan watched the whole clip in silence, his heart beating so loud he thought it might explode. His mind raced in circles. Why? How long had this been going on? Did Elena have any idea? Was Lily a victim, or was she just as guilty as Mark? None of the answers came. Only rage. And beneath that rage, a helpless, suffocating fear. This wasn't just a mistake or a betrayal. It was something that could destroy their entire family if it ever came out. For hours, Ryan sat alone in his room, staring at the paused image on the phone screen, frozen in time like some kind of nightmare that refused to fade. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, he imagined all the scenarios that could unfold. If he told Elena, it might break her completely. If he confronted Mark, he'd probably deny everything and turn it around on him, making Ryan look like the liar, the problem child. Lily, she wasn't the same anymore. She barely made eye contact with him, barely spoke, like she was living in a different world altogether, one Ryan couldn't reach, but Ryan knew he couldn't keep it to himself. It was eating him alive from the inside. The next day, he waited until Elena was sitting alone at the kitchen table before handing her the phone. He didn't say a word. He just pressed play and walked away. From his room, he could hear the silence stretch out, heavy and thick, like the air before a thunderstorm. There were no screams, no cries, no plates thrown against the wall. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that lets you know someone is breaking in complete silence. What Ryan didn't know at that moment was that Elena's quiet wasn't defeat. It was calculation. Something shifted in her that day, something deep and dangerous. As Ryan sat on his bed, staring at the wall, he had no idea that the chain of events he had just started would lead to something far worse than betrayal. It would lead to death.